The What to Read Next podcast helps you build a TBR of future favorite books. In each episode, Lori and Maine interviews authors and book influencers to recommend books they loved for you to pick up today. If you're an avid reader, always looking for your next great read, then the show's for you. Hi, Meredith. Welcome to What to Read Next podcast.
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me.
So happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Meredith, but a lot of people call me Mary. I'm from Manhattan, and I write lighthearted romantic comedies with a splash of on-the-page heat while juggling a day job as a trademark paralegal. I'm a runner. I read about 3 books a week, and my NetGalley shelf is about to topple over, and I'm absolutely addicted to television. And my trade paperback debut, As Seen on TV, came out on June 7th.
All right, so I got questions from this. What part of New York do you live? Or neighborhood? You don't need to tell the specifics, but just give us a neighborhood.
Wow. I live in Murray Hill in the 30s.
Perfect. So is it still frat central or is it?
Yes. Yes, okay. I feel very old. I don't do much socializing. There's a couple of places where I don't feel like an old lady, but for the most part, I've been here a while and I keep getting older, but the people who move into my building keep getting younger.
Yep.
So it's a little, sometimes it's kind of funny. Yes, it still is.
Yeah, I lived in New Jersey. I live in Jersey City, but I work in World Trade Center. So I have a friend who's lived in Murray Hill, and she's like, we're like, yeah, this is like frat central, God bless this area. But it's just like, this is what happens where frat boys, go to finance,
Yes, absolutely.
And then what type of television do you gravitate to?
You know what? Everywhere. Like I just finished watching Heartstopper on Netflix, which is the sweetest queer rom-com based in England, and it's adorable and it's light. And I started watching Fuller House. Ooh. After Bob Saget passed away. I was like, I have to watch this, and I find it delightful. But then I'll go and I'll watch Ozark, which is so dark. I sit there with my hands clenched, waiting for somebody to get shot, and they usually do. So yeah, I run the gamut from really, really light to very, very dark when it comes to TV.
I'm assuming based on your book, you've watched some Hallmark movies or have watched.
Yeah, I've watched 1 or 2. Okay. Somebody asked me, I did an event last week and the moderator asked me how many I had to watch in preparation to write my book. And I was like, none, because I had already watched all of them.
Yeah, I feel like that's one thing, because I was like, I watch Hallmark movies. It's not what I do. It's not the type of movies I watch. But my mom does watch them and stuff like that. So it's like I'm familiar with them and I'm familiar with the tropes, But I like more steam. I like a little more heat in my stuff.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to write, include steam in mine, because it's not the whole point is I'm not trying to write a Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
A rom-com about a woman who is obsessed with them, but this is not a rom-com. So it's not a Hallmark rom-com. So anybody who expects it to be like the chaste kiss in the last 3 minutes, that's not what you're going to get.
Yeah. So speaking of that, let's chat the elevator pitch for As Seen on TV.
Okay. As Seen on TV is about 25-year-old Adina Geller, who is a somewhat cynical Manhattanite and lifestyle freelance journalist who is obsessed with Hallmark movies and small towns in general. And when she hears about this New York City real estate conglomerate who's looking to take over or develop the tiny town of Pleasant Hollow in upstate New York, she pitches the idea of a real town living out a Hallmark subplot to the editor of a pop culture magazine called T. And she's given the green light to go to Pleasant Hollow and write this story with the reward of a full-time staff position at the magazine if it goes well. And she thinks this is a story that's going to make her career, and she'll be able to help out her single mother financially, and maybe she'll even have her own small town romance. Mm-hmm. Only when she arrives in Pleasant Hollow, she discovers it's nothing like television led her to believe. There's no festivals every weekend or at all. There's no homemade pie or any bakeries. The people are not up in arms about the developer at all, as would their television counterparts, and they're not very friendly to her. In fact, the only person who's welcoming to her is handsome and charming Finn Adams, who is a fellow Manhattanite and works for the real estate developer that she hoped to bring down.
Yes. And romance ensues, and some shenanigans, romance, and just a little bit of everything ensues. So I really love this book because it's just like it took the Hallmark spin. The small city girl goes to a small town and be like, oh, it's not like this trope. Like you're normally charming little town where everyone loves her name. Like they're like, no, they barely want to acknowledge her, you know.
Yes, exactly.
So what was the process of writing this book? Like, did you write it during the pandemic? Like, was it when did you start writing this book?
I started writing this book in about November of 2019, right when
Ooh,
my agent put the book that I wrote before it on submission, and that book didn't sell.
okay.
And so I was about halfway through the first draft in the middle of March when
Mhm.
everything was down. So I wrote the whole second half and did all the editing during the height of the pandemic. And
Mhm.
it was really good escape for me. And also, I mean, I live alone. I had to work from home. Nothing was open. So writing this book, I would say it really saved me, like from like depression and fear, because I would, I would wake up and I'd write before work, and then I would write again after work, and like after working online at home. And it was really the perfect escape. And I hope that people read it like that, just an escape from whatever issues that the world is facing and that they're facing. That's really what it's meant to be.
I think it was escape for me. Like I just got a sense of like, for getting out of the bubble and just being like, oh, exploring new place, meeting new people, doing all these different things that we would have done in 2020, 2021, and even parts of 2022 were shut down with COVID and stuff like that. So I think it's like it was a nice little escape to get out of it and like think about like, small town with big developer,
Yeah.
that doesn't look like Hallmark. Let's talk about the journey to publication because this is your trade debut. But you mentioned you wrote a book that did not sell.
Yes.
So
I got my agent, I think it was like, let me see. I think it was, we signed in February of 2019. And I didn't have that miserable experience in the query trenches that a lot
mhm,
of people have had. I had my share of rejections, but I got my agent, who I adore, pretty quickly. And we went through many rounds of revisions on this other book. It was a second chance romance
mhm,
and second chance rom-com. And it didn't sell. We went through all the big publishers, and I knew that my dream was to have my book in a bookstore, to get paid in advance. And I had published books with a small press years ago,
mhm.
and I didn't want to do that again. I really wanted to I wanted my dream of like the bookstore to come true. So we shelved that first book. And thankfully, by the time we were through with all the editors who were reading the first book, I was halfway through A Scene on TV, and I had so much time on my hands that we were able to go out on sub pretty quick. My agent had no changes for it. She loved it just the way it was. And I had interest from editors within like 24 hours, which after a book not getting even second reads than the first round to that, it was just, I would say until now, it was probably the most exciting week of my entire life.
Oh my God, that's amazing. But I think it's a testament, like you have to keep doing the work.
Mhm.
Don't trust, like don't just because it says no, it's not right now,
Yes.
you keep doing the work, like something's bound to happen.
Yes, and I tell a lot of authors that, like, know what your dreams are, and like hold on to those dreams, but don't necessarily hold on to a manuscript,
Yeah.
because it might. And it's hard. I mean, I was devastated. I loved that first book that
Mm,
didn't sell, but in hindsight, I feel like things happened the way they were supposed to, and I wouldn't do it any other way.
love this. All right, so let's chat about rom-coms and romance and stuff like that. What was your romance journey? Um, did you read romance growing up or rom-coms or like did you watch them? What was that journey for you?
Okay, I'm going to age myself a little bit, but in the late 80s, there were these series of books called Sweet Dreams.
Yes, I read those.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Well, they're like, they have like the tone of Sweet Valley High, but they're standalone romances. And they're always, if I remember correctly, they're always from the teenage woman's like POV.
Yeah.
And I love them. I devoured them. I still remember some of the names. There was CoverGirl and The Popularity Plan and P.S. I Love You. And like I tore through those. So that was my first journey with romance. And then I would steal my mother's like Danielle Steele and
Mhm.
Judith Krantz books and Jackie Collins, and they were very, very steamy. So I read those. And then they weren't really romance, but they were rom-com chick lit. I was a huge
Yep.
fan of chick lit, like the original chick lit. Like, so if you
Yeah.
consider, and there was a publisher called like Red Dress Inc., and they published like all of them. And I read like all of them. And so it's only recently that I've kind of read more traditional dual POV, sometimes some Regency, like just everything.
I love this. And so, do you have any books to recommend our listeners to pick up? It doesn't have to be romance. It can be anything.
All right. Well, I have so many. Like as I said, I read like 3 books a week, and I should stop requesting on NetGalley, and I cannot stop myself. I just have
problem that we all have. It's okay.
but I just like I never catch up to like the books that I bought that are just like piling up.
Yeah.
But the book that I'm about to finish is called Nothing But the Truth, and it's by Holly James, and it comes out I think July 12th. And it's about a woman who wakes up on her 30th birthday and discovers that she cannot tell a lie, not to herself and not to others. It's like pitched as a feminist liar. And it's absolutely delightful. I feel like it's the perfect summer read. Like I could just picture being on the beach and reading this book.
Love it.
So that's one. Then there's let's see, Fool Me Once by Ashley Winstead.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love that one as well. And the main character is kind of a mess, but it's hilarious. And Ashley is brilliant. She writes thrillers as well. In My Dreams, I Hold the Knife is one of my favorite books from last year, from 2021, because I mean, she could write a laundry list or like a grocery list, and I would give it 5 stars and tell everybody about it on Twitter. Like I loved it that much. Another thriller that I loved, because I read just like I watch TV from all genres. I also do that with my reading. And Watch Out for Her by Samantha M. Bailey, a Canadian author, was released in April, and it was like an instant bestseller on the charts in Canada. And very creepy in a really good way. If you like kind of like stalking and like troubled mothers and daughters, and I highly recommend it. In full disclosure, I am her critique partner. But I would not, I would not tell everybody to read the book if I didn't think it was phenomenal.
There we go. That's awesome.
And then there's All Fired Up by Dylan Newton, which just came out last week. And that's a contemporary romance that I would recommend to fans of like Abby Jimenez, because I feel like all the authors perfectly balance like the laugh out loud humor and the really heart-wrenching emotional, and like from chapter to chapter, like you're laughing and then you're crying, and like she does that really, really well.
I love this. Oh, so good.
And, Jean Meltzer, The Matzo Ball, I loved.
Yes. Oh, so good. That was so freaking good. It's a good companion to her book, actually, I would say. You know.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
And then The Dead Romantics I just finished. That's coming out at the end of the month, at the end of June, by Ashley. I don't know if it's Poston or Poston.
I think it's Poston or Poston. I'm not sure. But I read that book. So freaking good.
I know. Oh my God. Like it took me a couple like days to like recover from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you like a little bit of the paranormal, I think, it's, with a woman, a ghostwriter of romance being haunted and then falling in love with a ghost. I mean, how could you get like better than that?
In a quirky small town planning a funeral.
Yes.
The whole thing.
All these dead people and crows and all this shenanigans in the background. Yeah. So much. I've never read, I think she writes YA. I've never read her YA, but I want to.
Her YA is great. I would say Geekarella is a great one. It's a Cinderella retelling at a geek convention.
Oh, that's okay.
That's her stuff. And she has a couple fandom convention. And then I read her fantasy, The Beast and Briar, and it was actually really good. And I'm not a big fantasy reader, and I think that was a standalone, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So I really like Ashley. Ashley's coming to the show again because I really love her writing and she's great. So
good. I will listen.
Yeah. Awesome. Meredith, tell us where we can find you online.
I am mostly on Twitter and Instagram, and it's very easy because I'm at Meredith Schorr. on both. And my website is www.meredith